Hi, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm Ange McCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuitive Performance. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, whole person leadership facilitator, and your host. The Human Side of Business podcast is fueled by the genuine curiosity to understand how personal characteristics and skills can be leveraged to drive individual and team performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately organizational success within business. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, expanding our learning edges, and exploring the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of organizations. I'm so glad you're here. Hi there, this is Ange McCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuitive Performance, where our business is the success of your business. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, facilitator, and your host of the Elevate Business podcast. The Elevate Business podcast is a journey of discovery fueled by the curiosity to genuinely understand what makes people tick when it comes to their professional path, choices made, and the personal characteristics that drive performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately success. The Elevate Business podcast is here to promote the enormous contributions of small and medium-sized businesses around the world by exploring the actions that make a workplace successful, the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of an organization, and how we build whole person performance from the ground up. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, growing our learning edges, and honoring our passions with a special guest who has elevated their business, overcome obstacles, and inspires others to do the same. So glad you're here. Hi, and a warm welcome to episode number 11 of the Elevate Business podcast. I'm your host, Ange McCabe, and today I have the pleasure of introducing you to Anne-Marie Flinn, President and founder of Champion Foundational Change Agency.
Hey, Ange, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you. So glad you're here.
I am too. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Fantastic. So tell us a bit about yourself and your journey as to how you've become the founder and CEO of Champion Foundational Change Agency.
Yeah, sure. So I spent 30 years actually in the corporate world with a Fortune 100 company. And I realized that I have such a passion for mentoring and developing up-and-comers within the organization. And so I was doing a lot of that with the company that I worked with. And also, I was a certified facilitator of a program that expands the energy capacity of the people and the culture of organizations so they both can thrive. And over and above that, I'm also an international athlete, pro athlete in the sport of body fitness. So I'm ranked now at age 54, 7th in the world. And taking a look at all of the sort of experiences and gifts that I've been given over the years from all the learning and developing that I've had, I decided to kind of jump off the cliff and take an early retirement package with the company and open up my own business. So now I'm actually able to take all of that information, all of the skill sets and all of the mindset, and really build that and touch as many organizations in the world as I can with my own business.
Wow, that's a lot.
I get that. It's funny. I get that answer a lot actually when I tell people this stuff. You know what? Well, I was going to say, like, I could really see myself always gravitating towards the art and science of human, mental, physical, and emotional performance, not only within the lives of people, but also within the lives of organizations. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go along, because I think, or maybe I can just say it now, that
of course,
here's my mindset around organizations, is that an organization is like an organism. And they're a living, breathing entity that continues to evolve over time. And every organization, just like an organism, has a soul. So in organizations, we call that the culture.
Right.
And when the culture or the soul is clear, well-defined, and visible, then the organization or the organism thrives. And when there isn't clarity around the soul or the culture of the organization, or if there's toxicity and sort of like little cancers within an organization or within an organism, then it doesn't thrive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about how do you take the mindset of a thriving organism and bring that into the culture of an organization so that entity can also thrive. And that's kind of where my passion is.
What a great analogy. So tell us a little bit more of, as you've gone through your journey from corporate and also kind of winding in the coaching side of things, the culture piece of your passion, and then the bodybuilding. Tell us a little bit more about your biggest learning along the way for you.
Well, so the biggest learning is knowing how to sort of ride the wave, and also to know that when it comes to being perfect, there's no such thing. Number one. So I always say be perfectly imperfect with going through the waves of learning. There's 4 stages to learning.
Mm-hmm.
The first stage is what they call unconscious incompetence,
Mm-hmm.
which means I don't know that I know this stuff, or I don't even know what I know. And then from there you go into what's called the second level of learning, which is called conscious incompetence. Like, holy crap, now I know that I don't know this stuff. And that is where there's that vortex of discomfort that happens. And within that vortex, you can either choose to jump out and try to play safe,
Mm-hmm.
or you can choose to stay within the discomfort, to learn, to grow, to discover and get curious. And then from there, if you stay within that vortex of discomfort, you get to the third level of learning, which is called conscious competence. Like, it's like the eureka moments. I now know, it's like, wow, I now know that I know this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We've all kind of had those discoveries.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, when habits and rituals become and behaviors become rituals, then from there you have what's called unconscious competence. It's like, I don't even know that I know this stuff anymore. It's just a part of my being.
Right.
And I think that is my biggest learning, is that when we are going towards goals, when we're going towards what inspires us, is if we know that we can go through those 4 levels of learning, that there is a process, that we need to go through that vortex of discomfort to get to the other side, then that's where we will thrive.
Mm-hmm. And how do you work with discomfort?
Yeah, well, so first of all, know that discomfort is part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Learn how to stay in it. Also, learn how to be curious about it. That is the most important thing. There's something underlying that's creating the discomfort. And usually what that discomfort is those little gremlins that's kind of sit in our shoulders, or those inner beliefs that we might have that we're not worthy enough, we're not good enough, we just don't have what it takes to get to whatever our goals are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those are just called our inner saboteurs or our inner gremlins.
Mm-hmm. And
those little inner gremlins, they actually think they're protecting us against what they perceive as real danger. Well, the reality is there's nothing really that's dangerous about it. It's just fear.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we have a conversation around that? And how do we get curious about what's really holding us back?
Mm-hmm.
And what's really making us uncomfortable? Mm-hmm. And if we sit with it long enough and get curious about it, then we can also allow ourselves to say, have a conversation with those inner gremlins and say, listen, let's just take a coffee break, Mr. and Miss Gremlin. I know you're here to protect me, but I know that I can do this, and I'm going to keep moving forward. Mm-hmm. So just know that discomfort is all part of the process of growth. If you think about the caterpillar moving into the butterfly, evolving into the butterfly, it has to go through that growth stage, that discomfort stage, that almost that struggling stage to get out of the cocoon for it to grow and thrive.
Mm. Those are great analogies in the sense of painting the picture of the movement, the how-to. So for you personally, Emery, mm-hmm. what type of script kind of do you work through in your mind to get through the discomfort and to the other side into the butterfly stage?
Yeah. Well, I don't rely on motivation all the time. Because if I did, I would probably not be here talking to you today. And the reason why I say that is that there's 3 lies about motivation in terms of getting to a goal. Is that lie number 1 is you don't always have to be inspired. Or sorry, lie number 1 is that you have to be inspired 100% of the time to reach your goal. Well, it's not necessarily the case. Number 2 is that you should always be motivated to reach that goal. Well, I think we all know that we're not always 100% motivated every time we wake up in the morning. And number 3, that experts are always motivated. Well, that's not necessarily true either. I do a workshop, a program called Perfect Imperfection, and I talk all about all of these people that we aspire to become, or we see as these heroes that have all gone through those waves of failure and discomfort and not feeling motivated, and they still were able to achieve their goals.
Right.
So think about like motivation as like, a fickle cat, right? you know what it's like. You have a cat yourself. So, yes. And if we're relying on, motivation or that cat to be 100% happy all the time, well, we're setting ourselves up for failure already. So I kind of look at it from, if I was to take a look at, instead of looking at motivation all the time, I changed that to how can I set up one structure, how can I set up systems, and how can I set up a scheduling system so that when I'm not motivated, when I'm not feeling like getting up and going towards my goal and getting out of that discomfort, what are actions can I take that will help me continue to go through that?
That's a realistic approach, Emery, in the sense that you're recognizing there's motivations, and you're also recognizing that there's facets of motivations that are internal, which drives us and more often gives us our picture or our end destination. But what I'm hearing is that there's also external motivators that either we have to identify ourselves, or in most instances, I would say we operate on autopilot and we just kind of lean on external motivators. So other things that are influencing ourselves. Coming full circle, what I'm hearing from you, though, which is a really strong point, I haven't considered it before myself, in the sense that looking at how you organize and set up your objectives and goals and how you set up your scheduling system, that in itself is an external motivator.
Yeah. Well, when I get ready for competitions, one of the things that I always do is begin with the end in mind. So think about what the vision is. Like if you think about like the end of the perfect movie, right? What is it that you want to see? What does the end of the perfect movie look like? What does it feel like? What's the energy that you have that really wants you to watch that movie over and over again? So there's something that it gives you, that is that feeling that it gives you. So I always begin with the end in mind, and then I sort of work backwards and I create these little mini baby steps, these little mini baby goals that I can see that even when I'm not feeling motivated, when I'm not feeling inspired, when I'm not feeling like I'm, quote unquote, progressing, that there is these little baby steps and mini goals that I can actually say, you know what, I am reaching my ultimate goal. Think about, I don't know if yourself or any of your audience members go to the gym, and when it comes to building muscle, it's actually the only way you can build muscle is to actually go into that level of discomfort. And then when you go into that level of discomfort, you're actually allowing the muscles to grow. And so there's something there that actually is important about discomfort, that actually helps you with growth. And overnight too, you're not necessarily going to see, muscles automatically pop out. It's going to take time and time and time and repetition. And so how do you create the action and the structure and the systems and the scheduling to ensure that you are seeing that growth? Well, it's the same thing with any goal, with anything that you do within organizations, with anything that you do in life, that you don't necessarily see the evolution until you reflect back.
Exactly. Another great analogy in the sense of working through the frustrations or the uncomfortableness of growth, and also setting up yourself for success in the sense of how you want to visualize something at the end of the day, or how, not just visualize, but you're also describing how it should feel and what it should look like. So it's the whole picture versus just, okay, I have this end goal in mind. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Can I tell you a little story about an example of the discomfort?
Yes, please.
Okay.
You've read my mind.
Okay. That's my intuition coming in. So when I was 21, I won't tell you how many years ago. Well, I already told you I'm 54, so you guys can do the math. But when I was 21, I was in the Naval Reserves. I do a lot of motivational talks, and this is one of the talks I absolutely love talking about, is my story about becoming a military scuba diver and how I wanted to be, this up and coming goal setting military scuba diver and going all this adventure and everything. And when I signed up, I realized that I was going to be, if I passed the course, I'd become Atlantic Canada's very first female military scuba diver. So there was my end goal.
Okay.
My end goal was to, stand there with my badge and be proudly presented as being Atlantic Canada's very first female military scuba diver. So that was my end goal.
Right.
And that's what inspired me. That created the motivation for me to sign up. And then what I didn't tell them is that I'm claustrophobic and I really don't like the water. And I thought, well, sheesh, that can't be a problem. I've got this end goal. I can see it at the end of the movie, being the hero's welcome and all this sort of stuff. So throughout the entire course, every day was a scary moment for me. And I won't give you all the information, because if anybody wants me to do a keynote, I'd love to go through the actual story of it all. But bottom line is, there were a ton of examples of where I woke up in the morning and was put into situations where most people would say, I'm not doing this, because my fear of the fear of being claustrophobic and, not being a real fan of the water could have made me say, I'm not doing this. I'm just going home and I'm going to play safe. So every day I put myself into a situation of discomfort. Mm-hmm. And if I think about it, if I had listened to those gremlins, if I had listened to the discomfort and chose to stay safe and comfortable, I never would have become Atlantic Canada's very first female military scuba diver. And not only that, is that because I took this course and because I did so well in this course, not so well with everything, but I passed it. And I became Atlantic Canada's very first female military scuba diver. But the reality is it put me on this trajectory of where I am today. It got me into doing weights. Mm-hmm. It got me into sculpting my body. It got me into competing, where now I'm on the world stage and a pro athlete. It got me with the job, the Fortune 100 company that I spent 30 years with. It had nothing to do with the marks that I had in university, but it had everything to do with the stories I could tell them about my drive and determination and overcoming adversities. Mm-hmm. So it was character that, I was able to build. It got me to everything that I am today around mindset and making a difference in people's lives. So just imagine if I had chosen to listen to the fear, to listen to the discomfort. I don't believe I would be talking to you today.
Mm-hmm. That's deep. I really appreciate the vulnerability in that, because it takes a lot even to talk about our fears, regardless of the outcomes. And congratulations.
Thank you.
The accolades are just coming out in this conversation. It's wonderful. When it comes to rewards, so being awarded the first female international scuba diver from a military perspective, working for Fortune 100 company, having the certifications that you have, what do those mean to you? What do they represent for you in your life?
That's a good question. I think if anything, it's a validation of pushing through adversity and pushing through discomfort. And also, the thing that comes up for me is like knowing what I know, like following my instinct, following my intuition, and following my gut, that I am able to accomplish anything I put my mind to. Mm-hmm. So if anything, having that piece of paper to acknowledge that the piece of paper might mean something to somebody else, but to me internally, it's a huge validation of what I'm able to accomplish if I just simply set my mindset to doing something, to following through, no matter if I'm scared to death or feeling discomfort.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you spoke a little bit about the bodybuilding or the body fitness side of things. How did that come about?
Well, it came about, again, because I went into this military scuba diving course, and we were having to do up to 300 push-ups a day. We had to run 10 kilometers a day, swim 2 kilometers a day, and do all these very intensive workouts. And I was always a kind of a petite person. I was realizing I wasn't, able to carry my equipment around and all this sort of stuff to the extent that I wanted to. So I thought I'd start going to the gym. And that's what really got me inspired to notice how if I just did a weight this way, if I just use this technique, I can sculpt my body this way or that way. And that just fascinated me. And then to think that I can go on stage and exhibit the hard work that I put in, and talk about vulnerability, wearing a little itty bitty suit on stage and being judged. And for me, it was more about the process of it all, and not just going into the gym and learning how to sculpt my body a certain way to achieve a certain physique, but also what I did in the kitchen, what I did from a mindset standpoint. And think about it from like a three-legged stool. So it's what you do in the gym, it's what you do in the kitchen, and I shouldn't say most importantly, and ultimately what you do internally with your mindset. And if you have strength in all three of those legs, then the stool is secure. However, if you're doing, something in the gym and you're doing something in the kitchen, but yet your mindset is suboptimal, well, you're probably not going to succeed to the same extent, because you're not going to see that how failure is feedback, and you're not going to see how, how you're able to ride the wave. And you're also not going to be able to see how, when being judged and maybe not even, getting to what you thought you were going to see in terms of success, is how you can actually take that to grow versus take that as a way of being in a negative way. So mindset is I'm just fascinated with mindset. I call myself a mindset coach, because I truly believe that without that, we're never going to achieve what we think that we can achieve without that positive outlook.
Exactly. And you spoke about a couple times now about riding that wave. And so through bodybuilding, what I'm hearing is that it's giving you the ability to, again, make very succinct objectives or goal setting about sculpting your body and where you want to go with it. And then the 3 pillars of in the kitchen, in the gym, and your mindset. So those to me sound like almost different waves that are going at the same time as you move through the body sculpting process. How have you been able to master those things in a consistent manner for yourself?
I would say I don't master it consistently, because then I would say that I would be lying to your audience. So I think really, again, it all comes down to how do we see, well, when I do a lot of talks and everything, I talk about, when you are reaching your goal, it's never a straight line. Right? And if we think it's a straight line, if we do see any bumps in the road, we might see that as a failure. We might step out. So it's like, how do we shift that mindset where we just say, okay, one of the things when I talk about in my Perfect Imperfection workshop, I usually get people to do breakouts, and I say, okay, all I want you to do as a group or individually, depending on how many are there, is that you have to draw the perfect wave. And it has to be perfect. And there won't be any other, you can't come to me without it being perfect.
Right.
And now you have to tell me why it's perfect. Well, and isn't it interesting that people are going to come to me with different they're going to present different waves.
Yes.
It's going to look different. It could be calm, it could be treacherous, it could. So the whole idea is that there's no such thing as perfection. So like drawing the perfect cloud, there's no such thing, right? So how do we see that all of these waves and all of the times that whether the ocean's calm or there's the ocean is huge waves or whatever, is how do we see all of that as gifts, and how do we learn from it versus see it as failure or a way to step back.
And what's your outlook for being soft? So the self-forgiveness of if there's a pause on the goal, or if there's something that kind of steps you back, or even if it progresses too fast for you, outside of your own expectations, how do you soften that for yourself?
Lots of internal conversation. I'm going in a few different directions with that. First of all, notice a name. Notice when those gremlins show up. Notice how, am I in judgment mode, or am I in curiosity mode? And just have that internal conversation, like, what am I judging? Am I judging myself? And how do I know? Am I saying the words should, could, would? Am I saying yes, but versus yes, and? What are those what's the internal conversation that I'm having with myself? And just be with that, and just allow the compassion, and be compassionate with yourself, and be gentle with that conversation. And just know that that's the script. It's simply a script. And if we were to shift that, and once we have that, I tend to go out in nature, go for walk the dog, maybe have a little cry with the dog, and then just allow myself to kind of go through that energy purge. And then when I'm able to go through that energy purge, whether it's, feeling some anger or feeling some tears or whatever, it's simply energy that just needs to be released. Have that energy purge. And then I can kind of sit down and say, okay, let's get curious about this.
There's a lot of unpacking in what you said. I'm picking up on 4 different things. So one of which is really getting comfortable of knowing yourself, knowing your triggers, knowing how to identify those, because oftentimes we run through this world on autopilot. Even working remote now, we've kind of replaced our busy habits with new types of busy habits, right? So baking sourdough, who has the best sourdough, or, playing games on Zoom, but in all seriousness, I think it's really great to understand the thought patterns. But for some of us, at first, it's identifying what's going on with our physical self, I feel, because to get really proficient at being self-aware, you have to know where to look first. And for everyone, it's different. And within Intuitive's coaching practice, what we've identified is that oftentimes it's, the stress habits that we lean on. So are we looking for more mummy wine Wednesdays, or are we emotionally eating, or are we even going to the gym more? Like, what is our vice that we're leaning on? And then identifying, which, to your point, which is extremely important, okay, I'm doing this, what has made me go there? So what has been that internal, the gremlins, Mr. and Mrs. Gremlins, using your words, or, what has gone on in the past day or a couple of weeks that has really kind of put me into these choices.
Yes.
And that's what it comes down to, is really getting comfortable about the self-awareness piece. The other things that I'm hearing is that, it's leaning on your own choices and resiliency around getting out of that. So we can make bad choices as adults, and we can make good choices. And the bad choices aren't actually bad, but maybe it's just not healthy for us in that mind frame or that physical state, etc. And it's really identifying different options of, it's okay to have a release, and what does that look like?
Yes.
And then reflecting on that and moving forward. So those are 4 really powerful messages that I truly appreciate, Anne-Marie, you sharing with the audience, because it's identifying, it's being able to sit with it, it's being able to be curious about it in the uncomfortable space, because oftentimes when it comes to self-reflection, it's uncomfortable because, a lot of us has been brought up in the realm of we don't really need to show emotions,
Yeah.
or we need to separate our emotions from the workplace or even the gym, or as an athlete, you have to be tough, you have to be resilient. We've been taught all of those things. And what I'm seeing is that it's not working for us.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm actually doing a talk too about becoming a trauma-informed employer, and also the difference between trauma and stress. And I think it's just a really, really, really important conversation to be having right now, because there is what they call the silent scream that's happening inside of us, that we're not having that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, to your point, is like, what are we doing to relieve ourselves, to actually feel like we can just get away from whatever's showing up from us inside of us just for a bit? Is it wine Wednesdays? Is it, overdoing at the gym? Is it overeating? Is it undereating? Is it, what is it that we're doing to try to cope with it without actually, can we just have a conversation about it without judgment? Can we actually deep dive into it? Because there's something that wants to be heard. And when we allow that to be heard, then how can we take that, embrace it, kind of nurture it, and then to help it move into a healthier space.
Exactly. And so through all of that, how do you look at your next steps? When you're in discovery mode, what type of script kind of goes through your mind, or what activities are you partaking in to identify that next step for you for growth?
When I already have a goal, or am I looking for new goals?
It could be either or.
Oh, okay. So I really rely a lot on my gut and my intuition, and really tap into that. So when it comes to new goals, I really want to stay in a state of curiosity, and allow myself to listen to what my curiosity is saying, because in there, that's where my passion lies. That's where, the play area is. And what is it in there that is, keeping me motivated, activated, inspired? What is that? And then get curious about it. Even if I don't have a name for it right now, what's the feeling? What's the thought? What's the visual at the end of what's the meta view? What's the visual at the end of the movie that it is that I can see? And then from there, I'll start to be able to bring more kind of visibility around it, and maybe put a name or a title to it.
Right.
When it comes to, current goals, again, keeping the end in mind, and then knowing that there are little baby steps that I can acknowledge that I am going in the right direction. I may not see it until I reflect back, and that's what's really important. Give yourself the time to reflect back and look at it. It's like, I really have evolved. I really have made a lot of progress. If I was to reflect back and really see all those little baby steps that's gotten me to where I am today.
Right. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And what would you say are 3 words of inspiration that you would want the world to hear?
Okay, so make sure you write this down, because this is really important. Okay? Okay. Be perfectly imperfect.
That's fantastic. And did you want to elaborate on that at all for us? I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but now you have me curious.
Yeah, well, again, allow ourselves to ride the wave. Allow ourselves to course correct with curiosity. Know that there is no such thing as perfection. Every cloud has a silver lining, and every cloud is perfectly imperfect. And if we can see ourselves as perfectly imperfect, what would that give us permission to do? And what would that give us permission to be?
Fantastic. I'm just digesting it. And trying to take notes at the same time. I'm just joking. I can go back on the recording. Thank you very much, Anne-Marie, for joining me today. I could certainly talk to you for hours on these topics. It's so intriguing.
We could have a water Wednesday, not a wine Wednesday.
Exactly. I agree. And I really appreciate you sharing your entrepreneurial insights with Intuitive Performance and our subscribers. So for those of you who would like to learn more about Anne-Marie's business, we're going to provide a link to her company's profile on the Elevate Business podcast title page. Take good care. Thanks for listening to the Elevate Business podcast. I hope you enjoyed the program. You can subscribe to future podcasts at intuitiveperformance.com, where you can also sign up for webinars and learn more about professional coaching and our facilitation solutions available to help fire up your whole person performance skills and drive actions for success. Until next time, stay true to you and take care of each other. We are all better together. Thanks for listening to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm glad you could join us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, make sure to visit our website. The link can be found in the episode description, where you can subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our newsletter, and learn more about our whole person leadership services. Sounds interesting? Explore the Whole Person Leadership Cohort by Intuitive Performance, a unique program that offers unparalleled support to managers on every step of their leadership journey. Our program features evidence-based assessments, workbooks, group coaching, and interactive learning experiences to help you level up your leadership skills. Reach out today to apply to one of our upcoming cohorts. Until next time, take care and stay curious.